Hello, this is Chris Hall, and this is my Cold War presentation final assessment for Mr. Dubus. So the first country that we'll be going over is the United States. So the first event for the United States is the creation of NATO. The creation of NATO started when there were suspicious rumors of further communist expansion in Europe. After these speculations, the United States and 11 other Western European and North American countries came together to form the North American Treaty Organization. The creation of NATO was primarily a security pact, which said that the countries who were a part of the organization were united together. This meant that an attack on one of them was basically an attack on all of them. So some good outcomes of NATO include that it created the World Security Council. Every member had a powerful ally to protect themselves from future invasions. It maintained world peace. NATO members helped resolve conflict around the world to avoid future worldly conflicts. It also reduced security threats while creating the alliance with the most powerful countries in the world. Other nations who posed a threat to any of the smaller members backed down because they knew they weren't going to win that fight. It also further trade with members. The alliance furthered trade ties with other members and created new ones. Now, some bad outcomes of NATO include that it caused overdependence. NATO members relied too much on the bigger countries in the treaty. It was also expensive. NATO is a very expensive organization because they had to meet the military and financial obligations. It created budget problems for the smaller nations because they weren't as powerful as the bigger powers like the United States and Britain. So they had to meet the standards of the military power, which caused them to overspend on their military and go into debt. They also created a loss of sovereignty. The European nations relied too much on America, causing them to be more dependent than independent. The next event for the United States is the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan, also known as the European Recovery Program, was a U.S. program which provided aid to Western European countries following the disasters of World War II. The Marshall Plan was put into action in 1948 and provided European countries with more than $15 billion in aid to help finance the rebuilding effort of Europe. The money went to the countries to help rebuild their agricultural and industrial industries. So some good outcomes of the Marshall Plan include that it caused Soviet containment. The Marshall Plan established economies and political systems in several European nations bordering the Soviet sphere of influence. It also created liberalism. The Marshall Plan encouraged the development of liberal democratic systems of government in Europe. It also caused encouragement of free trade. The conditions placed in the Marshall Plan aid injected free trade policies and practices into European economics. Now, some bad outcomes of the Marshall Plan include that all the Soviet-controlled countries didn't receive support. Also, all the other countries in Asia didn't receive support, like Japan and China. The Soviet Union rivaled the plan with their own Molotov Plan, which stated their own propaganda with relief grants for the Eastern Bloc countries. The next country is the Soviet Union. The first event was that they created communist buffer states. So coming out of World War II, the Soviet Union wanted to create a buffer zone for two main reasons. The first reason is that the Soviet Union created buffer states to keep people from escaping the communist influence. They wanted everyone to stay and stop being tempted from Western influence. The second part why they created the buffer states was to protect themselves from a Western intrusion. There was a physical barrier that ran along the East-West Germany border. The Soviet Union wanted to keep communism alive during these rebuilding times. So some good outcomes for creating the buffer states. Soviet Union gained territory after defeating Hitler. The Soviet Union gained a lot of land in Eastern Europe. It was a natural barricade. These countries created a natural defense from Western intrusion. It also kept communism alive. It kept the communist population from leaving and fleeing. So therefore it kept it alive from trying to go into Western influence. Now some bad outcomes for creating buffer states caused tension between the United States and the Soviets. a lot of conflict came out of these countries. Local conflicts started conflicts between local people and different ethnic groups. It was also a forceful stay, forced people who wanted to leave, and the cost of the stay made people in those countries hate the communist leaders. The last event for the Soviet Union is that they created an ICBM. So the Soviet Union announced that they successfully tested an intercontinental ballistic missile capable of being fired into any part of the world. This announcement caused great concern for the other nations, especially the United States. This started a great debate over the missile gap between the United States and the Soviet Union. The announcement caused a great race called the arms race between the United States and Russia, which meant that each country quickly made mass amounts of nukes. At the end of the race, Russia said that they had successfully created an ICBM which covered a huge distance in a brief time and landed in the targeted area. Yet no details were given to the public, and the officials of the United States doubted that the ICBM test was successful. So some good outcomes of creating the ICBM. So this news put a statement to the United States that they are capable to compete in the arms race. This is also good for self-defense for the Soviet Union, or they could go on the offensive and attack other countries with their ICBM. This also gave them a say in society because now they had a weapon of mass destruction and they were able to, negotiate with people. So bad outcomes for creating the ICBM. So now, since they had a weapon of mass destruction, all eyes are on them, which meant that every country was looking towards them in case they got mad, because now they have a weapon that could basically blow their heads off. It heightened security in case of a nuclear war with the United States, and the United States rivals them with more weapons of mass destruction, and then they both eventually have enough warheads to blow the Earth up 7 times over. Thank you for listening to my presentation.